There's something there, but I don't exactly know what it is.
I don't either. Lots of strange things, but what's stranger than that was when I was Motzi Shabbos. I literally came to shul to get my sitter to go to my shtender to daven. So I just said, someone was running behind me, and his friend I recognized from my shul, but he obviously was a guest. I saw him in shul as a guest, and he was just I happened to catch the tail end of their conversation about how his pshat on gathering gathering from the four corners of the earth. When we say in davening to gather the Jewish people from the four corners of the earth, it says in the Torah that's what Kibbutz Galus is all about. I mean, I've heard a lot of things in my day. I've had to experience a lot of discussions and arguments about Eretz Israel, and I basically thought I've heard everything up until this point in time. But this was like whoa! It's like I stopped in the spot, and he just basically said that that's what it means. God's going to gather up the four corners of the earth. Not the people, the four corners themselves, basically, and the whole place will become Eretz Israel.
And he's going to fold it.
And that's what we're waiting for. So therefore, there's no reason to come Eretz Israel now. That's what it says.
Because it automatically don't happen.
Yeah, and the truth is, it is brought down in Kabbalah.
Isn't that what they think, though?
Yeah, but this guy. So the guy said his friends were not to Eretz Israel. He's going to bring them. He's going to gather them to Eretz Israel. He said, no. He's going to gather the four corners up. And when these things hit you, it's like at the right moment, you're just the right distance away, that you could make a kind of comment, and the right mood, and the right, it's like just like everything's boom, 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 like this, like that. And I just turned around and I said, wow, that's amazing. I've heard all kinds, but I never heard that one before. It's like, can I quote you on that one? It's like, he's like, and the guy's like, you would expect to hear this thing, but it was just amazing that people could think like this, how much they resist the idea of Eretz Israel, ad kedei kach, that people have to go out, and change midrashim, change psukim, change its feel. It's right there in the Tekabah Shofar, the bracha about gathering in, that will gather you in from the four corners of the earth to Eretz Israel at the end of history. And this is the way people think. People just simply do not appreciate the politics has marred the whole discussion about the general importance of Eretz Israel to the Jewish people. It's like that's Amalek. That's Amalek. See, Amalek, people think that Amalek wants to kill us, right? As we saw in the Slonim, right? Amalek, it's much more kef for Amalek that the Jewish people survive, but are puzzle to God. That's what he wants to do. And it's like Amalek came, we were seeing the Slonim, see the Shalom, that he mentions over there, brings down all the good questions, that Amalek didn't come with a large army. He didn't. It says it brings down a Parshas Kiseitze at the end, where it mentions the interaction with Amalek back there. And Rashi brings down Lashon Shekorcha B'derech, right? Korcha is Lashon Keri. But Amalek came to Mitame Klal Yisrael. So at first, when I first saw that, I thought to myself, what does that mean? Like these guys are like strange, funny kinds of people who are looking to do all kinds of things like they did back in Stom like that. Like that's what they were after over here. And I realized after that's not what it is B'chlal, because we see that Bilam and Balak, as the Zohar points out, the letters of Bilam and Balak have within them Amalek, right? Because the shorish of Bilam and Balak is Amalek, and what Bilam and Balak did was an Amalekian type of a thing, and the rest of the world, the rest of the letters are Bavel, because what they did caused the first exile. What Bilam and Balak did caused the Jewish people to go to Bavel. And Bavel, of course, means the Babel, which the Bavel the dust. Why? Because Bilam told Balak that forget about going to war against them physically. We had Sichon and Og. You had the best, bitachon service in the area, and these guys couldn't put up a fight. One Moshe Rabbeinu himself knocked at Og, and Sichon the whole. These guys collapsed. So what do you expect to do that they couldn't do? He says. So to fight them head on is not the issue. What do you do then? He says send them benot midyan. Why? Because there are three klipos in the world, there's three main klipos. There's klip of kina, jealousy, gaiva, and taiva. Those are the three main klipos, right? So, to attack the Jewish people, first of all, you didn't have to come after them with gaiva. There was already enough gaiva amongst them anyhow, and as we see by looking around, that gaiva is not a thing to puzzle you from living in the land of Eretz Israel. You could have a gaiva and live here too. It's not going to stop you. On the contrary, it might even encourage you to some degree, right? Jealousy, it's again, it's not an obstacle. You can live here and be just as jealous as you are at Chutzlaretz. It works perfectly fine, and you can function here.
Well, if it gets too out of hand,
yes, but taiva, that's a nikuf, that's gashmis, right? So different peoples represented different klipot. At that time, Midjan represented the klipa of Taiva.
Isn't that sexual, though?
Yeah.
Sexual, food doesn't make a difference. Taiva is Taiva. Gashmias, right? It's all the same thing.
Well, isn't the Ikar of Taiva is...
Believe it or not, not necessarily. It can be food just as much as anything else, or physical. In fact, physical possessions more so. Physical possessions probably the greatest Taiva there is in the world. Because sexual desire is a Zmani type of a thing. It comes and it goes. It comes and goes. But people want the possessions all the time, every second. It's like acquiring more power. Certainly, it's like power is one of the number one driving factors. People will give up sexual relationships for the sake of more power. That's how powerful a drive, because it makes you more. The other one's just like it's like overeating. It's not really a fulfillment per se. It's just what's the motion? Just like fulfilling an appetite. But now power makes you feel godly, right? Makes you feel more control, the more godly you feel, the more fulfilled. It's a false. It's an avodah zarah, but that's what it makes people feel. Whatever it is, but it's taiva. Taiva is the biggest ikum. You see, just looking today, that's what's going on in the world today. Taiva is keeping people from crossing the Yarden, from crossing the Atlantic. It's like we've got to have the gashmis, we've got to have the physical pleasures, otherwise we won't come.
It's called addiction.
Addiction. Yeah. Well, that's what it becomes.
But the Midian, that was a title for
No.
sex.
No. That's how they got them in.
Yeah.
It was for avodah zarah. The sexual part was used to get them in for the avodah zarah. That's what they're after, because they knew the other thing can come and go, right? And that's why what happens immediately after the whole story takes place, right? So it says Bnei Reuven, Bnei Gad, Bnei Menashe, they come to Moshe and they say, we want to live over here on the east side of the Jordan River. We like it over here in Jordan. Why? Because we have lots of we have a lot of cattle, and plenty of grass over here. Well, I guess in those days, today I don't find too much grass, but plenty of grass, plenty of pasture land, and we want to stay over here. And Moshe goes, "You guys crazy? For 40 years we've been wandering the desert this entire time because your ancestors did the exact same thing, and you guys are the gal to come over here." The Medrash says the moment that they came and they made that request, even though there was a way to fulfill it, right? That was the beginning of Galus Bavel. 850 years prior to actually taking place.
Who says that?
The Medrash Rabba on that parsha. Basically, that's what it said. Right? That was the beginning of Galus Bavel, because it was Bavel of dust. Why? Where'd that come from? Where do you give a verse Israel for pasture land? Where's that come from? So that's what happens when you're infected by Midian and Taiva. Your whole perspective changes. You look at the world in terms of Gashmias. So then what matters to you the most is where can you have the most Gashmias in the end, and that's what affected them, and that was the beginning. And not only that, by the way, not only did it was the beginning of Galus Bavel, but the Gra brings down, they asked the Gra, how many people have to cross the border to live in Eretz Yisrael at one time to bring the Gula Shlema, neutralize the Sitra Achra, and cancel out the Galus? 600,000, right? When they chose to stay in Chutz La'aretz, they canceled that out. So they actually held off the Gula for the rest of Klal Yisrael as well until this very day. All because of Balak and Bilam, who sent it in Midian, which is based in Mushosh and Amalek, because Amalek understands that you cannot attack the Jewish people physically. It's just not going to work. What you have to do is puzzle them to the relationship to Kodesh Baruch Hu. You have to get the Kodesh Baruch Hu to reject them. That's what you have to do. So you kind of metame them, right? Yeah.
I don't understand. She said, our taiva was for the sex. They wanted us to that was the hook to get it to avodah zarah, but we did it for the sex, which Hashem really hates more than anything else.
Zima, 100%. But at the end of all that, that's not going to necessarily keep you versus Israel, right? They know that's just down the road. Once you win a person's appetite, you get them thinking those terms. Ultimately speaking, it will come down to possessions. Ultimately, if the person is a possibility, that's the greatest type that people have in the world for possessions. That's what makes a person. Because the other way,
you're equating that with power.
That's power. Yeah, because you don't get power the other way. All you do, how does a person feel who has an addiction, for alcohol or for drugs, and they just keep fulfilling it? They don't feel better about life. It's a fix, right? It's an addiction. They can't stop themselves. They're addicted, right? But they don't feel better about themselves. They don't feel good about it. They even feel that, it would be great to get off this stuff at some point in time. When it comes to Gash's possession, people don't see it that way. They just keep building and building and building, and they build empires, and you feel like a king after a while, and you feel godly. And that's where the avodah zarah comes in. Now, there's a side point. I don't want to dwell too much on that particular point, but I'm just saying that This is how it shades people's way of thinking. That once you start to think in terms of taiva affects your way of looking at the world, then you can read the entire Torah in your own pshat and perspective and convince yourself what you're doing is in fact the best thing in the world for the Jewish people. And the Shvatim made that mistake by Yosef, and later on Meragli by Israel. And historically, that's always been our problem. We don't appreciate. I mean, what is the main thing we've done wrong all these years? And that is the rejection of Eretz Yisrael. We're going back to the Meragli, right? We rejected Eretz Yisrael, B'Shem Torah, and obviously there are a lot of other problems. But the starting point was that the Jewish people would only have lived in Eretz Yisrael and appreciated the land they got, the gift from day one, which they didn't do. Even once we came into the land, we were still affected by the Meragli. We never really got on our feet because we did not complete the Geula when the time to complete the Geula was taking place. So therefore, when we went to attack the land, we couldn't kill all the Canaanim. We couldn't complete the job, even though Kadosh Baruch Hu warned us. That was the real holy war. That was probably the only war in history.
That was Yehoshua. Yehoshua himself didn't do it.
Yeah.
In other words, he was given the tzivui he said, these people will be like pins in your eyes.
Yeah, 100%.
Unless you get rid of them.
But he had problems with the people. Right, Yeshua would have done it. He had problems with the people. Yeshua was a tzaddik, but it was just an uphill battle the whole way through. It wasn't because it was already happening with derech smola. Right, the people were not zoche yet derech under Moshe Benu, perhaps but they never really got. Ever since the Meragli, they never got it right, and that's why Yeshua sent 2 spies as opposed to 10 spies, 12 spies, because he understood that even still they wouldn't have learned the lesson. If he sent 12 spies, there's still a chance others would have come back and said, "Don't go, don't go, don't go." So he was very particular. If you look at the story of Yosef Yeshua, he's having very down-to-earth battles and struggles the entire way through. Miracles are happening all over the place. They lost 36 people in the Battle of Ai. Well, actually, the says one, because he was equal to 36 people, but just to lose one person, no one should have been lost at all, right? So it goes back because of what's his name, who took the booty from the war. What's his name? Achan, right? He was always taking it. He took it before they came, but before they crossed the border, it didn't count. Now they crossed the border, so now there was a collective responsibility. So now they were punished for that. But how does that happen? How does it happen in such a fantastically important period of history? It should all be chalak, because that's what happens when the Gula comes with derech smola. If it comes with derech smola, so then everything gets confounded. Everything gets confused, right? It's so easy to lose the forest from the trees. And politics is one of the most fantastic ways to undo the magical, mystical reality of Eretz Yisrael. To the point that people reject it, they don't understand. To reject the government, to reject the politics is one thing, but to reject the land is just being mamshich the chet of the Meragli. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of others of the Ram, Arishon, basically. But that's Ramban for that matter. But that's what's going on. So, having said that, it's important to know on a deeper level, right? Drowning pshat. If you don't see the deeper sources, you can't appreciate what's really going on behind the surface. So, here's a chapter. Tuvaris, right? The Sefer is from Rav Nosson Shapira, who was the Rav of Krakow before he went to Yerushalayim, became the Rav of Yerushalayim in 1656, I think around that time basically, and it was very poor at that time. He went to Europe to try to raise funds for Yerushalayim and the Jews of Eretz Israel, and he became ill while he was there. He got stuck in Italy. And he came across the time was unbelievable because he came across a certain Gedolim Makubim who actually had it in their possession the manuscripts of Rechai Vital, the Rizal. That there was no Kisvei Rizal at this point in time, just in the manuscripts, and they were now organizing it in this what became eventually the Kisvei Rizal, this form we have today, editing it, making sure it's all authentic and all. And he was part of that, and he got a hold of a lot of the Midrashim of Eretz Israel from B'Shem Rizal, and he put them to a sefer called Tuva Aretz back in the 1500s. And the sefer, apparently, he's quoted a lot. He was quite well known. And just recently, they republished the sefer, and it has inside of it all these fantastic midrashim about the importance of Eretz Israel from a Kabbalistic point of view, and it's mind-blowing. It's worth learning the sefer inside.
So you're saying he was on his way to Eretz Israel?
No, he was on his way back. He wanted to come back, and he got ill.
He was on his way back
from Italy. He'd already come to Israel.
Yeah.
He became the Rav of Yerushalayim.
Right.
He went to Europe to raise money for them. And then he became ill while he was there and got stuck. I don't know if he ever even came back. I don't know if he died
He got ill in
Italy. To the point he couldn't travel.
And where was it in Italy?
I forget. I think it's brought down the question.
What was the year?
Around 1656.
Around the time of the Ramchal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were doing they had this.
They were compiling the writings of the Arizal. I guess they found the scripts in Damascus from the Arizal from the Acharei Mot-Kedoshim, and they were going through them. They were going through them to make and trying to organize them into the Sfarim.
Who was they?
I forget their names. They're also well known, but I think it's all in the beginning of the Sefer.
I see. And his name was Nassim Shapiro.
Yeah, Nassim Shapiro. Yeah, and he's written quite a few.
And he wrote this book, Tov HaAretz. This is his book.
He said at the very beginning that it's not my words. I just took the words of the Arizal and put them together in the Sefer. That's the first thing he says in the introduction. Let me help me sew things together, but it's all based upon the things of the Arizal. This chapter is called Malos, right? Malos Hadar Be'eretz Yisrael Pagam Hadar B'chutz La'aretz. What is the advantage of living in Eretz Yisrael, and what is the blemish of living in Chutz La'aretz? For those who are not well acquainted with either, basically, but this is forever. This has nothing to do with time. There's nothing to do with which government's there, with which empire is controlling the place. Obviously, if you can't get there because your life would be too much in danger, then obviously a person had to go up there at that point in time. There are certain periods of time where they couldn't get there, or it just was too dangerous to get there. But short of all those serious situations, the reality of Eretz Yisrael never changed. It's always the same. It's Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't have to change. If it could change, we could have stayed there the entire time through. The reason why we're exiled is because basically Eretz Yisrael does not change. The same if, for example, if God forbid a couple is going through a struggle and they need time apart from each other, separation, right? If one stays in the house, the other one has to go, right? If the other one leaves, and he can stay in the house, right? So the wife stays in the house, the husband has to go. If the husband stays in the house, the wife has to go. It's not called separation, stay in the house. If Eretz Yisrael could lose its Kedusha, then we could stay in Eretz Yisrael, because we wouldn't be near from the Kedusha. We couldn't get to it. The fact that Eretz Yisrael maintains its Kedusha meant we had to leave, because we couldn't take part of it. So that's why exile becomes important. You understand? Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So he says the following thing: "B'mailus hadaber Yisrael pagam b'chutz la'aretz da ki neshamas Yisrael hadaim b'chutz la'aretz ma'olam standup." Right. So the neshamas of Jews who live in chutz la'aretz is from the lowest level of all the spheres. Basically, they come from the level of the Malchus. They come from the world of Asiya, right, which corresponds to a certain angel that's spelt Samach Nun Daled Yud. Sorry, Samach Nun Daled Lamed Pei Vav Nun, pronounced Sandalpon. I think that's what it's pronounced. That angel, he's well known in angel circles. Anyhow, who Olam Ofanim? That's the world of Ofanim, not Ofanayim, which are bicycles. Different story. Right? Who Olam Asiya? That's the world of Asiya. It's the lowest of the five worlds. Right? Asiya, Yitzira, Bria, Atzilus, Adam Kadmon, or Ein Sof. That's the hierarchy, right? Olam Asiya is the bottom one. Vayikra Beis Yaakov, and that level is called Beis Yaakov, right? Because that's the Shem Begalus. Vayikra Avadim, and they're also called Avadim, those souls. That level is called Avadim, slaves. V'nikrim al Eved Ivri, it's because it's Jewish souls, so it's Eved Ivri. It's a Jewish slave, right? That's the level of Eved Ivri. Shecheshbona Nachash, and the gematria of which is Nachash, which is snake.
Gematria of what?
Of Eved Ivri. Bifnei sheim tachas eklipos, since these souls are under the klipos, and the chutz la'aretz, by definition, is a makam of tuma. It's an impure place until Mashiach comes and history, evolves and everything goes up in kedusha, and the sidracha is no longer around. So since they're under the klipos, kamo shivor achakach, as we'll explain later on, and that's why they're called all these things. Amnam, however, hadarim be'eretz Yisrael ba'aretz. Lishmasim olam matat, right? So that's a higher level of angel. Matat is actually the sar of Mashiach ben Yosef, and also the Jewish people in general, right? And it's a higher level. Anybody who lives in Israel, by definition, the Neshama is on a higher madrega. You see what that means? Zeu Eretz Tzvi, and that's why it's called Eretz Tzvi, or they're called that because that's the gematria of Chanach, who evolved into Matat, right? Chanach was the one before Eliyahu went up on his fiery chariot to Shemayim, right? Chanach already did that on a fiery horse back in the days when he left early, right? Kosh Baruch Hu took him because he used to waver back and forth. How did he go to Shemayim? He went on a fiery horse. As he went up, got there, he transformed from Chanach the person to Matat the angel. He became the minister of the interior. Well, Sarpanim. That's
Did
what
he
it's
also
usually.
become Sam?
No. Sam is the bad guy. This is again.
Why
Sam
did
is
they take, what was so great about Hanukkah?
He actually had what's called the Zir Allah of a nefesh of Atzilus, which came from Adam Rishon. So he was a very high. He was one of the last people to have that level of soul.
You had the Nefesh Atzilus?
The nefesh of Atzilus that Adam had lost from the Chet. He had this level. So he was on an extremely high level to begin
How
with.
did he get it?
That's who he was. He was it was whatever tikkun had to go through. It went to Chanukh next, and basically he had this very high level soul.
Was it natural or was it earned?
It was not. He was born with it. He was created with it. Doesn't really say much about that. It just says that he did. It doesn't say why, but that's the reality. He has Chaim in his name, so it's automatically an indication that he's like a Yosef type person. But he had this very high level soul, and because of that, he got this fantastic connection to Kosh Baruch Hu, and Kosh Baruch Hu took him, and he was able to become an angel in the end, and he became the angel of the level of Yetzirah, Matatron. Right? That's
That's
what
level of Yetzirah.
Yetzirah, higher level.
He was at Silas, but he...
Well, he was, yeah, but now he's but this is his neshama was, but now he himself, his physical body was down here. His neshama was up there, but his body was down here. But now his whole being is up in Yetzirah. His neshama is still probably rooted in the same place, but he's the one who's in charge of that level.
So, but here he was on a physical level, he was higher than he was there because Yetzirah is below
His neshama,
uh,
and his neshama may have stayed at that level even when he got to Yetzirah. But his goof was down here, and now his goof is the goof of an angel, and it's up there. So he's definitely on a higher level now than he was when he was down on earth, physically speaking.
and he became Matat. That's
He
what
became,
he
yeah,
became.
yeah, just like
What does
Eliyahu.
Matat stand for?
His full name is Matatron.
Matatron?
Yeah, but we don't like to say the full names because when you say the full names of some angels, I don't know why some yes, some no. It's like invoking them, right? So some people are makpid not to, and some people don't really care. But
What was his role?
what is his role?
Yeah, what was
He governs that. He covers that level. He's like
governs the level of Yetzirah.
yeah, and Kosh Baruch Hu basically works through him and Michal, but works through him a lot to govern the hashkach of the Jewish people. Now the sandal, the one below, is through whom Kosh Baruch Hu works to govern the hashkach of the Gentile world, the rest of the world, right? The world outside of Eretz Yisrael. But Matat is the one that Kosh Baruch Hu works through to govern the hashkach of the Jewish people.
So you're saying for each of those levels there's a particular angel?
Yeah,
For
100%.
So
Not in Atzilus. Atzilus, there's no angels anymore. Not that I'm aware of.
Atzilus doesn't have an angel?
No.
So Yetzirah is the highest one that has an angel?
No, Bria has also angels too.
Oh, but Bria is below Yetzirah.
No, Bria's a higher.
Okay, so who's the angel of Bria?
I don't know. I don't remember how it's structured. I didn't do so well in Angels 105.
Okay, all right.
But I'll go back and try and review that.
Have to go back to Sefer
Okay.
Yetzirah.
Yeah.
So
I'm still working on making a golem right now.
Okay. So Yetzirah was Matat, though. Yetzirah was Matat,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And where was Mechoel? You mentioned Mechoel.
So Michael is one of these 5 angels that actually they move. They go up and down. They're not so stationary.
But he's like a flexible guy.
He's really he's actually the one who governs Eretz Yisrael completely. He's like the main angel.
Which one?
Michael.
Well,
He's the
like
Sar of
Uriel,
Eretz Yisrael.
Raphael, Uriel.
Yeah, Michael's like we'll have to have a class on angels one day,
Yeah.
and then that'll probably be the last class we'll ever
I
have.
want to have some visual aids on that.
Yeah,
I know you do.
you want some real angels? I don't. It scared some bigger people than us before. They said that Gra was able to invoke them.
Oh, Rob, I meant to ask you, when we were talking before, just as you mentioned that about this whole thing about you mentioned something about the Gra saying the 20th day of the Omer.
Yeah.
Right? The 20th day of the Omer. He mentioned that the 20th day of the Omer was going to be some kind of an auspicious.
He said it's an auspicious time for Gula. That's what he said.
He said that?
Yeah, and Eliyahu Kitov writes that in his little kuntras, but I'm still looking to find in my house.
He actually wrote this. The Gra wrote this. The 20th day.
Yeah,
of the Omer was gonna be
I didn't see it inside a sefer of the Gra myself, but that's what he brings down B'Shem Gra, and the day that also Yom Yerushalayim takes place. These 2 days, the Gra brought down in the Omer are very, very auspicious times. So that's why it was a big deal. This stuff is only new to in recent times because we don't get involved in these things, but these things have been known for by Mekublim for a long time. So I'll try and find it anyhow.
Yes, sir.
That's what he says. Okay, so he says, "V'hu miyud sfir yitzir v'kra b'nei Yisrael," and that level is called B'nei Yisrael. So the first level is called Beis Yaakov, and this level is called B'nei Yisrael. Al Shem Eretz the Yisrael Saba, on Shem the land of Yisrael Saba, which is Yaakov Avinu, right? And it was named for him. Yikru B'nai, and that level is not called Evid, but that level is called my children. Nikrim, but because they know the whole discussion, Terence Rufus, Rabbi Kiva, about whether we're children, whether we're avadim.
Is this one?
This is the same one. He's Sira.
He's
He's still finishing off what we started.
I got you. So Sia was Beis Yaakov
Right.
and Avodim.
Right, exactly.
Sira. Okay.
And there's a Yisira, and this is called the Bnei Israel, and it's called Benai, my children. And the Korean Benai El Chai, and they're called the children of the living God, right? Al Shem Eretz Achayim Ilu'ayim, which is referring to the upper living land up in the spheres. Okay. Hinei Hadam Keshu B'Chutz La'aretz. A person, when he's living in Chutz La'aretz, Haisel Nefesh Molam of Ofanim, as we just finished saying, and he gets his Nefesh from the level of the Ofanim, that's the Sia, which we just spoke about. Kishazach V'Nichlas La'aretz. That's he merits to go to Eretz Yisrael, whatever reason, right? Balo Nefesh Chadasha. When he gets there, he gets a whole new Nefesh. Nefesh B'Nefesh, right? It's all changed.
No matter what the reason for coming here.
As long as he's going to live here. Coming to live. No pilot ships, none of that stuff. Okay?
Is that where Nefesh B'Nefesh comes from?
No, but it should have been. Right? Chadashim Olam HaYitzira. Where does he get the nefesh from? From Olam Yitzira. Right? They give him a whole new nefesh. Right? Mislabeshes b'toch nefesh yeshana shayis alo. And what it does is it gets enclosed inside the old nefesh that he had before. That's when he first arrives. Ubalayla harishon shishan ba'aretz. Right? But the first time he goes to bed in Eretz Yisrael, Yotzu shtei nefashos for all lamala. Both the nefashos leave him because you go to bed at nighttime, the souls go up, right? So both nefashos will go up to the world above, like they do every night. Ubechazara einu chozers ela chadasha bilvad. But the next morning, only the new one goes back. Tremendous advantage because you did all your veris with the old one, right? So what happens basically, you get a whole new nefesh the next day. You're starting with a clean slate. Okay. Not my words.
You know, everything I did bad in Chutz La'aretz.
Yeah, but it's, provide. Yeah, but you have to keep the slate clean after you get the new nefesh too.
Hashem, I think I've been doing a fairly good job.
You're a good boy.
I'm perfect.
Yeah, okay.
He also gives forgiveness every day.
That's we'll get there. Yeah, it's not over yet. It gets better. It gets better. Well, there's Eino Reuya La'onshi, right? And he's not fitting for onshin anymore because he got a new nefesh. Ki lo chata'ah. He didn't do a chet yet, right? Therefore, it's the Gemara says, the person who's in Israel, they're moichlim kol ha'masav, they forgive all your sins. Why is that? Because you come to Israel, automatically you get kapara, like Yom Kippur, everything's forgiven, because you get a brand new nefesh. A brand new nefesh, basically it's like the speedometer is back to zero once again. Right? They get a new car, a whole engine. That's what Rav Yochanan says in chapter 13 of Kesuvos, at the end of the Gemara, it's talking about Israel and the Chashivas of Eretz Israel, like the last three dafim, two dafim. Kol mahalach dalad amas, anybody who walks dalad amas Eretz Israel, muftach lo shehu ben olam haba. Says over there, anybody who walks dalad amas, right? You go to the kitchen, walk dalad amas Eretz Israel, you just got your muftach. That a person's a ben olam haba. It's a dalad mitzvah. You're doing two mitzvahs. If you're gonna go to daven. You get the mitzvah going to daven plus the mitzvah walking Dalad Amos each time. So muftach, how? Why should a person be a ben olam haba? Right? Hakavanahu. This is the kavana. Mi'achar shenosnim lo neshama chadasha bli pagam shel avanasav. After they gave the guy a brand new neshama, which is free of all blemishes and all sins, in Cain, bevadai shu ben olam haba. What else can he be? You got a new soul, right? You're starting from scratch. Of course you're ben olam haba. This point. But in terms of Eretz Israel itself, it only fixes up the sins automatically that were done accidentally. But anybody does averas purposely, premeditatively, right? A person specifically goes into doing an avera in Eretz Israel, that will only get forgiven through Yisurim. That Yisurim takes care of that. The Gamzrich Shia Mavir.
That's from the old. In other words, a person did averas deliberately in the old country,
No, even now after you get the new neshama, right? So every time you see the chutz lards, every time you do a sin accidentally, you're not forgiven automatically. You have to, Yom Kippur is mechaper unless you do tshuva in the meantime,
Okay,
right?
but when you come to Eretz Israel,
No, everything is wiped away. We got
even
new
the ones
nefesh.
you did deliberately,
Everything. You're starting from. It says you're not a bar ocean. You're not chai for anything. You're starting all over. There's a halacha. There's a gemara. In Makos, I think it is, that if someone was tried for capital punishment in chutzlars, and before they could execute judgment, he runs there to Israel. They have to try him all over again, because the schus of Eretz Israel, it works on his behalf. He's no longer the same person. If he went to another base in the chutzlars, he killed him right away. He was already judged by one base, then you kill him now, right? But coming to Israel is a schus that puts him back to square one all over again.
is it Gemara?
It's more, yeah.
Really? Where is it?
I think it's a Makos, I believe.
Really?
Also, I think it's Shami as well.
Yeah.
I recall.
I'm learning right now. I'm learning the Kusai, right? And we started on the part where it's dealing with Israel, and the king of the Khazars was already converted.
Right.
And the Mechaber is telling him now that to live in Eretz Israel is a completely different reality than living anyplace else. And he had never talked about this before with him. He says, "What? How can that be? What's the difference of living in Eretz Israel versus living any other place?" So the whole conversation now is going
Exactly. You should have given 2 vars. He wouldn't have the question. The gamsush he had bavir al misah. So Yisurim plus he has to fix his attitude. He has to change his attitude.
Basically, what you're saying is, instead of buying a condo in Florida, better to come here.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And you can buy a condo in Florida, but also get you.
Retire.
Yeah, 100%. This is the best place to be when you're leaving the world.
Sure.
Because you want to leave with a clean slate. Here's the place to do it.
Exactly.
So he says, "Upashim hanasim be'eretz ein lehem slicha ela al yedei tshuva v'tamud Torah." Right, but someone who does averas in Israel, like literally rebelliously, not just like purposely, like a taiva, but rebelliously, he does it. He's wanton in his behavior. So that requires tshuva and learning Torah. Kain kesav ramak rechma v'chu. That's what the Ramak has written. The Moshe Kodevero. That's the 3 shlavim. Accidental averas, the lad is mechaper anyhow. Right. Purposely done averas, you have to go through your surim and change his midas. Right. The third thing is a posheya. The third level, right? We do all chet. You see all 3 of them. So he says, so that takes tshuva and Talmud Torah and some other things as well. Anyhow, that's what he says. Aval ekel lemidat tshuva. We could be much more precise. He says, v'lo mesektes v'halo. Based upon it says mesektes keshuvas. Amar Rav Elazar kol hadar beis Yisrael sherui below von. The Gemara says anybody who lives in Eretz Yisrael lives here without chet, no sin. That's what the Gemara says. Shnemar, as the Bible says, Bal Yomar Shekein Chalisi Am Hayoshiv Ba Naso Avon, right? That the people who dwell there, right? That they dwell there and it carries their sin. Talking about Eretz Yisrael, right? Carrying their sin. That's a passage from Yeshaya. Ad Kalashana Im Kein Mashma Afila Avonus, right? From that, it seems not just accidental errors, but even the ones that were done premeditatively. But the land somehow rectifies both. It says b'yavon. It doesn't make a distinction between an accidental shogeg and done things done purposely. The passage says generally that they have no avon, right? Gam kein haaretz mechaperes. Even for things done purposely, the land itself is mechaper for those as well. Ve'echashar zeh hayoshiv ba b'shev al taseh, right? Right, so that would be possible for things that were, you don't get up and do, actually do an avera, right? But but how's it possible? For things that I don't actually get involved in a ma'aseh, for example, I didn't say shema, or I didn't, let's say, do a mitzvah properly. I didn't do the ma'aseh, right? Or it was a sheval tasa, which means I shouldn't have got up and done something. But things are done purposely. Averas are done premeditatively. How is it possible Eretz Yisrael can be mechaper for a thing like that? He says, Aval Yituratz. We can answer the question. The Masha made the Medrash Yalkut Shimoni B'Tehil, right? With the Medrash, the Yalkut Shimoni says in Tehillim on Daf Kuf Yud Vav Amud Daled Bezel Shana Retzisa Hashem Artzecha Shabbos Shvus Yaakov, right? Kosh Baruch Hu, and that is from, where's that from? That is from, that's from Tehillim, okay? That makes perfect sense. That's what it is. So he says, Kosh Baruch Hu wants your land, right? And the restings of Yaakov, the rest of Yaakov, not the rest of Yaakov, but the rest of Yaakov, that Yaakov rests, right? Shabbos, right? Zesher Kasav is what it says. Aretz Asher Hashem Elokav Dorish Osa. The passage says in the Torah itself, the Varim, right? It's the land that Kosh Baruch himself is Dorish. He's looking for it. He's looking into it. He's mashkiach over it. Yeah, Hofa Chatosh Baruch Hu Mahapech Ba. What does it mean Dorish Ba? What does it mean Dorish Osa? What does it mean he desires? Right? It says Hofa Chatosh Baruch Hu Mahapech Ba. Right? Kosh Baruch Hu he takes it, turns it over, and turns it over. V'nos and that puts his eye into it. Until its actions are ritsui, are desirable to Hashem. Kosh Baruch Hu does some kind of tikkun process in the land. Turns it over until its ma'asim become desirable to Kosh Baruch Hu. So he says, what does it mean? The mitzvahs shenitzava aliyah, the mitzvahs that are commanded with respect to the land itself, the mitzvahs tului ba'aretz, the mitzvahs dependent upon the land, Trumas and Meiser, Shemitah, all these halachas. Im hotzi Yisrael es masrav v'osim es hashmiti. If the Jewish people take Meiser gehilchasa the way they're supposed to, and they keep the Shemitah the way they're supposed to, osa sha'ar hi meratza ma'aseha. At that time, the actions become desirable to Hashem. That by doing the mitzvah Tului Ba'aretz, somehow that makes everything work out for Kosh Baruch Hu.
So this doesn't apply for Goyim.
They have no mitzvahs. They have no mitzvahs like this. They have no mitzvahs. They have no mitzvahs Tului Ba'aretz.
They have the 7 Noachites.
That's not.
It has to do. We're talking about mitzvahs Tului Ba'aretz. It's only shy for the Jewish people.
Only shy for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
So could you just paraphrase what's happening here?
The question was asking is how is it possible? The fact that I know that Averas could be mechaper, as Israel, they can have a kapar for them because you didn't really do something. You made a mistake.
These are some people who came and are living here.
These are people who are living here.
And what happens? In other words, they
you say right now, based on the Gemara, that anybody who lives in Israel, anybody who accidentally sins the land automatically is mechaper for them. On Yom Kippur, 24/7, 365 a year.
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally.
Now
So at first, the Ramak says that, but Avalnos, that's Yisuri. That takes Yisuri. Right? And Pashim, and Poshea, that takes Tanotara, Tshuva, real, thorough cleansing of the person and thorough Tshuva. Right? So then he says, but we can look at the Gemara Kesuvas, and based on the Gemara doesn't make a distinction like that. The Gemara says, anyone who lives in Israel lives without avonis, right? From the Gemara, it sounds like even things that were done, and it uses the language of avonis, right? So that that usually implies purposely done averis. So the Gemara seems to make it sound as if whether it's a shogeg, whether it's amazing, the land has the capacity to mechaper for a Jew.
Still not a higher level of cleansing in Yom Kippur.
Same thing.
Same thing?
Same thing. It's Yom Kippur every single day. Without the fasting. Without the fasting.
Huh.
So you get a new nefesh we come, and any various you do after that, right? It's wiped away. It's clean. It's cleansed.
So how do you? So in other words,
this is being very important because this week's parsha, it mentions at the end that if you're going to fall in the ways of the Canaanim, the land is going to spit you out. So how could the land possibly spit you out if all the affairs are being atoned for all the time? That's the question that's going to come up, in the end.
That was my question.
But let's just first get there. So much time we have here. Okay, maybe the cuts a little bit.
Paraphrase.
Yeah. So that's what he says. He says, therefore, he introduces this idea that the land. He's going to say right now, the kach. Once the Jewish people keep, it says, v'chein hu omer az tirtzah haaretz es shesuseya. Then the land will desire her rest, right? The cave mitzvah Hashem artecha. The Kosh Baruch will desire your land. So when the Shemitah is being kept in Eretz Yisrael and the mitzvah Tului Ba'aretz, so then the land becomes desirable to Hashem, and He forgives everybody. We'll see what that means in a second. Hashem, He says, "Rotzelamar." What does it mean? Mi nose avonim haaretz, right? Asher hein yoshvim aleha, right? Who is carrying their sins, right? Ha'art asher hein yoshvim aleha. Medayik in the pasuk, right? Who's taking their sins over? What happened to their sins? They did these averas, right? Based upon the pasuk, what's going on over here? So who's carrying the sins? Haaretz, the land. Jews who sin in Eretz Yisrael, the land takes over the sins. It takes it upon itself, right? And builds up. And as it says, the people that dwell there, it carries the sin. So the land itself has the capacity to absorb the sins of the Jewish people living in Eretz Yisrael. That's what it says.
So maybe then the only sins it won't absorb are the ones that are Talui Ba'aretz.
Oh well, what? Yeah. So
Is that
I'm
what you're saying?
going to skip ahead over here,
In
but
other words, if you're committing sins, but again, this is ben adam lechaveiro, right? If you're committing sins ben adam lechaveiro, I'm just hypothesizing. So if you're doing the mitzvahs that are Talui Ba'aretz, then you're mechaper even on those. No?
yeah, because you did miss it to ours. So just to cut to the chase, because to bring it because it might, it can go on. It's like there's many pages over here. It goes on and on and on. I spent too much time in the introduction, but the lesson brings down a discussion about the korban tamid, right? And the question that the Medrash asked, it says that the korban tamid that was brought in the morning was for all the averes done the previous night, and the one brought ben Rabbi in the afternoon was for all the averes done during the daytime. So you had Kippur 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was never a moment in time when there wasn't a Kippur taking place for Klal Yisrael. The Medrash says that that's the case, so why were they brought to the land? Why were they split out in the end? Why were they punished? I mean, they had Kippur the entire time. So the Medrash says because they relied upon that to do their averes. They said, since the Korban Tamid is going to be mechaper for me at 6 o'clock this afternoon, at 5:30, I'm going to go speak Lashon Hara. I'll do something I shouldn't do, whatever. And I'll know a half an hour later. The same way that the Rambam brings down, the Gemara brings down. It's not Rambam, the Rambam brings it down because the Gemara brings it down. And anybody who says I will do a chet and Yom Kippur mechaper for me, Yom Kippur is my mechaper for you. You think you're going to beat the system over here? Because Baruch Hu builds a system to help you out. You use the system to your advantage and corrupt it. It's not going to work that way. Sorry, it doesn't happen that way. Psychologically, Messias-wise, what's the difference? It's not going to work. So therefore, says the Medrash, once the Jewish people were relying upon the Korban Tamid, the continual offering to atone for their averes, the Baruch Hu says doesn't work anymore. So now your averes add up, which answers a credible question, because Rashi says that the whole, he says that the reason we went to Bavel for 70 years is because we missed 70 Shemitas. Right? Missed 70 Shemitas, and this is to make up for all the Shemitas that we kept. And that's what went to Galus Bavel. We know from the Gemara a few places we were guilty of Gili Arias, Avodah Zarah, and Shvichas Damim, all these terrible averas that are certainly much worse than not keeping the Shemitah. So why does the Rashi simply say, you know why they went to Galus? They're doing the 3 big averas, right? The reasons you're supposed to die for rather than commit. That's why they went to Galus. What do you mean because they didn't keep the Shemitah? But the answer is because as long as they were keeping the Shemitah, they had Kapara, or Gil Hirayish, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. They had Kapara. But the moment they stopped doing the Mitzvah Tului Ba'aretz, so now there is nothing to get to allow the land to process the averas and to release it. Because every 7 years we keep the Shemitah, all the averas the Jews keep are released. It goes up, wherever it goes, it disappears, it's wiped away. The slate starts all over, it's clean, starts fresh the 8th year, all of a sudden. So Baruch Hu, the land now becomes desirable to the Jewish people. And that's what the Gemara, that's what Torah is telling you, the land will spit you out. Because as long as you're doing, don't do averas for sure, you can't do averas. I mean, even the land atones, you're not going to get schar for mitzvahs you didn't do, right? Yeah, you won't get punished for these things. But he says that even though that the land will atone for you, but if you're going to do the averas on the condition that the land will atone for you, it won't atone for you, and then it will spit you out. Then the averas will build up. That's the difference. That's the basic difference. So he goes over, it is even more remarkable. He says, if you just find it, skipping ahead over here.
So in other words, the land was accepting was absorbing all of the chatoim of Bnei Israel. As long as we were
doing the mitzvahs
that were Talui Ba'aretz.
Right, exactly.
So then just on a hypothetical question, what was it about the mitzvah? Why was it so important to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do the mitzvahs which were tabui ba'aretz, that he was so willing to mechaper on all of these other sins?
So that's a discussion to itself. Maybe next week, we'll look at that, because they're very special. As the Kli Yakar points out in Parshas V'Eschanan, the whole reason why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to get to the land, the whole reason, was just to mekayim the mitzvah tabui ba'aretz. Every other mitzvah he could do in the desert. Even if it was hypothetical, he could still do it in the desert and get a taste of it somehow.
I can see why. I mean, from what you're telling me,
Exactly.
I can see why.
Exactly.
You know?
But there's some sod
Uh-huh.
to mitzvah tabui ba'aretz, which we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Right, but he goes over here and he says the following thing. He says, He skipped over a page and a half over here. But anyone who's in Chutz La'aretz, he says that it's not enough the person stops doing the Avera, but he won't get kapara for the past unless he does tshuva. In Eretz Yisrael, it's already happening, right? But in Chutz La'aretz, you got to do it, right? So when people tell you that the whole reason they don't want to come is because they're worried about doing Averas in Eretz Yisrael, whereas in Chutz La'aretz it counts for less, which is not really a great sphora, right? That's not the way we function. It's the other way around. Because if they do an Aver in Chutz La'aretz, either Yom Kippur is mechaper, or it's not mechaper for them in the end. They have to do the proper tshuva. But deliver Israel, every chet a person does is being atoned for, as long as they're not doing the chet based upon the reality that they're being atoned for. Okay? So he says, Ela filu she'oisa tov. Even a person does good deeds in Chutz La'aretz, but also mitzvah atzma she'osa choter, he's now doing a mitzvah where he used to do an Avera in Chutz La'aretz, okay? Because someone who lives in Chutz La'aretz is called somebody who worships idols but tahara. You're doing the right thing. You're living life with a tzaddik in Chutz La'aretz, but still called ki'ilu. You're being ovdei avodah zarah. You're worshiping idols, but tahara, in a pure way. It's not what it's supposed to be, but it's better. Kiyotashu tzaddik v'osatov, right? Because there should be a tzaddik and do tov. It's obviously better, Chutz La'aretz, even if you can't get the same level of kapara, but you should still try to be a tzaddik, 100%, and do good. Yotuhu garem shekosh baruch hu mashpil l'asar shehu yoshet tachtav, because the more good things you do in Chutz La'aretz, the more Kosh Baruch Hu will give tov also to the people there as well. Because what happens, you're causing Kosh Baruch Hu to have to give shefa, in Chutz La'aretz, which strengthens the sar of those lands, gives them more power, which makes people think that America is godly, or Canada is godly because they see all the success going on there. Knis Galal says it before. Therefore, he's have to suffer for that as well, because they brought shefa down, in a place that the kedusha should be so strong. So that's causing, you're forcing Kosh Baruch Hu's hand to put light and blessing into places that doesn't really belong. He says, Gam because of the Ramak V'zal, the Daki Kol Mishudar Be'eretz Yisrael. And the Ramak adds to this. He says, you should know, anybody who lives in Eretz Yisrael has a shem tzaddik. He's called tzaddik. Now you understand why. Gam. So he says, and this is, when I read it the first time, I thought to myself, how far does this go? It was like, tzaddik. Okay, tell me the Averas are atoned for, but there's lots of people here who don't look like tzaddikim. That's what I said at the bottom of this page. The very next thing he says over here is, he says, his gam she'enu tzaddik kafi hanireh. Even somebody who doesn't even look like a tzaddik has a shame tzaddik because he lives in Eretz Yisrael. Listen to this. She'im lo hayat tzaddik hais ha'aretz maki osa. Because if he wasn't a tzaddik, he'd already be kicked out of the land. The fact that you're still living here counts for a tremendous amount. The guy's totally chiloni. He's like, Kosh Baruch has his cheshbonos. How this whole thing works. Obviously, he can't get schar for mitzvahs. It's not sanctioning a person living, not by Torah. But it's telling you that before you simply, cancel, puzzle everybody because they're not doing things the way you understand it should be done, that's a pasha over here, right? As it says, the taki aris esha shreiha, because that's from this week's parsha, the land will spit out its inhabitants. If it's not spitting out its inhabitants, it means the people still have a shame sunny to them. The kiva she'ena makioso, bevadai nikrat tzadi. And since the land is yet to spit the person out, and people are being spit out to look twice about what's going on, right? Afapi, And so he's called tzaddik, afapishu nira kecheskas rasha. Did you catch that?
Those that go
Even though
back
he's
for
an
whatever
evil
reason.
No. Let me read it. He says this person, if he's not spit out, he's still living there, right? He's going one huge step further. He says this person has a cheskas tzaddik, even though he appears to have a cheskas rasha. He's somebody who people would say, this guy's a rasha. Again, Erev Rav is a different category, right? There are people who actually go to war against the Jewish people. Yeah. But there are people that that guy's a rasha. He doesn't look like Torah, misses all that.
Why don't they fit into this category?
Who? Erev Rav?
Yeah.
Because they're not really part of Klal Yisrael. They're basically fighting against the Jewish people, and Yiddishkeit altogether. Okay. He says, and that's what it says in Tehillim, we said this morning, right? This is the gate of Hashem, Tzaddikim go through it. Talking about Israel, as he's going to explain, because that's all about Yaakov Avinu. He says, Ein ze ki ein beis Elokim, v'zer shar shemayim. Those were Yaakov's words when he woke up from his dream, and so the angels got up and down the ladder. Gam remes Tzaddikim yavo bo, Rosh Tevet Tzvi. He goes on and brings more and more proof, basically, but that's the basic idea. There's much more here, but that's the basic concept. They're saying that, there's a lot of differences, but one fundamental, essential difference between Chutz La'aretz and Israel is, number one, the level of neshama a person has while he's here. Number two, you're making aliyah, right? By definition, obviously, if you live your entire life, nothing to worry about. You already had the higher level of neshama when you were first born here. He even goes so far as to say that if a person gets it before his bar mitzvah, Shemaim will look at it as if he lived his entire life, as if he was born here. And being born here is a tremendous milah and schus, to be born in Israel. And he says, so you're different higher level of nefesh. He also goes into that, the halacha is what happens if you go away for a few weeks, or if you go away for longer than that. How does it affect your nefesh and the shama?
What happens if you go away? What happens to those that come here on Aliyah and don't make it?
So you walk up to the coat check guy, and you give him the special nefesh you have. He gives you a little ticket, right? You go to Chutz for 2 weeks, you come back, he gives it back to you, as long as you get a little ticket still in hand.
Could you equate that with saying the land spit him out?
No. Spitting out means you're being forced to live in Chutz La'aretz. Whatever reason. You're being forced to live. You want to be here, right? You want to be here, and for whatever reason, you're being forced to go out. Now, obviously, people go with the Shem Mitzvah, but the bottom line is that anybody who decides to leave Chutz La'aretz, they have to leave as if they're being pulled by wild horses. There's no such thing. The Moshe Tshuva back in the 70s, 60s, was actually, I think it was Hilchus Gershon, and he's talking about, I think one of the issues he's talking about, let's say someone wants to live in Israel, versus one person wants to live in Chutz La'aretz. They get to the whole issue about the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Israel, and he says, at this time, it's really a wonder why we don't all go back. Why there's no mitzvah to live in Eretz Israel. Because I can't pass in that way, because I know that if I did that tomorrow, how many people would just, would reject that psach halacha. He said, but it's certainly a mitzvah of shoes, and therefore it's not so pashut that once you're there, you can leave. Not so pashut, right? Because it's chiyuvi to some degree. But all that aside, all the politics aside, everything aside, who are we? Who are the Jewish people? What is our driving force? Where we want to go in the end? We're headed for the world to come. You want to be muftach lo, ben olam haba. That's what it's all after. The Gemara has a whole thing in Sanhedrin, I think it is, about how do you know if a person who dies is a ben olam haba, and who does this is a ben olam haba. The Gemara Pesachim is saying who lives in Israel is a ben olam haba. It's all about becoming a ben olam haba. There's a chazaka. This person is going to the world to come. So there's lots of ways to do it. But obviously, if a person is in the business of making money, he's going to make the best investments he can possibly make. He's going to spend the time to research and invest his time, his money, and his koiches, because that's what he's being paid to do. If a person's in the business of being a sports athlete, doing things very, very well, he's going to work out and eat the proper foods to become a sports athlete. If a person is in the business of becoming a Talmid Chacham, that's what he wants to become. He's going to be a master. He's going to put his time in, right? If we're in the business of becoming a ben olam haba, by definition, we have to pursue the best course that maximizes the opportunity to do exactly that. There's only one ikuv to becoming a ben olam haba, and as a person does a lot of averis, right? And it's natural. In this world, it's hard not to. Ein tzaddik ba'aretz, right? There's no tzaddik on the land who won't do a ched at some point in time, eat some kind of treif in some way at one point in time. But what you want to do is make sure that if the situation occurs in the best place, the best situation, mechila. This is the land which, by definition, a person can live as a tzaddik on a daily basis. Obviously, the more a person tries, the harder a person tries, the better it's going to be. But Eretz Yisrael is way up there.